And in talking to them, in a lot of self-reflection, I came to the realization that some of my frustrations weren't exactly due to flaws on his end, but they may have been a reflection of toxic traits within myself. What's up, bougie bosses? It's your girl, Kayla Simmons, and today I'm going to be serving some humble pie again today, you guys. And I'm going to be turning the spotlight on myself, and maybe not in the best way. We're going to be talking about toxicity, and we're going to be doing a brutal self-check. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Everyone always talks about their encounters with toxicity and how it shouldn't be tolerated. And while this is so true, people rarely admit their own toxic traits, their own faults. This is why we're going to be doing a deep dive into toxicity from an internal perspective. And in the spirit of transparency, I'm going to be sharing my story. So let's take it all the way back to last September. This was when I met a man, child, and I got into my first serious adult relationship with this man. Like, y'all, this was the first time I thought I had been in love before, but this time it wasn't like no puppy love, or it wasn't lust or anything like that. Like, it was like I fell in love with him, right? But the thing is, I went into that relationship with a lot of baggage. So let me just break this down for you so you can have some clarification of what type of baggage I was carrying into that relationship. So approximately 1 month before we met, my parents' divorce was finalized. Around the same time, I came to terms with being molested when I was younger. And then about 3 days, actually exactly 3 days before we met, my grandmother died. 1 week after we met, we became an exclusive couple and got into a relationship 1 week after we met, okay? And this was a long distance relationship, so we really hadn't even met in person. We had met online. Well, not online, but we met through, we met through my best friend Amber and her man. Like, they set us up. So we hadn't even met in person before we became an exclusive couple. And then 1 month into us dating, he met my family. So you can kind of get a gist for a lot of the factors that were playing into it, and just like you can start to see just how fast things were moving. And I mean, of course, like, it wasn't just things on my end, but obviously respecting his privacy, I'm not going to go into all of that. But yeah, so on my end, that's kind of what we were looking at. So I have mentioned, maybe not so much on this YouTube channel, but especially on the blog and such, my issues with my struggle rather with emotional detachment and vulnerability, and that has had a direct impact on the toxic behavior that I'm about to tell you guys about. I was impatient, I was unrealistic, I was extremely cold at times. Anytime something happened that I didn't like, I would question if I should leave. I would catch, attitudes, or I would get attitudes if, something wasn't changing as fast as I would have wanted it to, a behavior or something didn't happen as fast as I would have wanted to, or in the way that I would have wanted it to happen. I would get extremely defensive about, I don't know, I guess in situations where I may get called out, or, observations would have been made, I would get extremely defensive. Now, granted, some of my frustrations were completely warranted. I mean, at the end of the day, like, everybody has toxic traits. That's why I'm making this video. But, even though some of my frustrations were warranted, the extremity of my frustrations were not warranted. I had developed this unrealistic expectation of what a relationship should entail. And honestly, I think I can attribute a lot of that to just this whole concept of relationship goals, like, in social media. Because honestly, relationship goals, it's not about the true essence of a relationship. It's about perfection. Like, that's what people expect when they see it. You know, people have this crazy sense of entitlement when you see couples who, you know, are cute or seem to have it together or seem to have a healthy relationship. But the minute something goes wrong, oh, well, you know, they were fake or this, that, and the third. And it's just like, no, they were just humans in a relationship. And I think especially like if you've never really been in a real relationship or you haven't been in one in a while, sometimes, you know, in setting those standards that you do need, you can become a little bit unrealistic. And that was me, honestly. So what changed, you might wonder? Well, thank God for honest friends and honest conversations. They really set me straight. Two of my best friends, Shy and Amber, they both, obviously, I just mentioned, you know, Amber and her man are the one who set us up. You know, I would go to them, not for everything, because I don't believe you should go to your friends or honestly anyone for that matter for everything in your relationship. My mama always told me, you don't tell, especially your family, like when you're into it with your partner, because especially if you know that you guys are gonna like move forward and you're gonna get over it, never tell your family and maybe even some friends, because you will move on but they will not. And so I've carried that with me. But yeah, so I went to them in some instances, you know, and also because they've been in relationships for a long time. I think at this point, Amber and her man, they'd been together for about a year. It's probably about 2 now. And then Shy, Shy and Nikki have been together for about 6, 7 years. So, you know, she really is, you know, knows the ins and outs of a relationship. Obviously, like, we're all young and stuff, so there's still a lot for us to learn. But, you know, she's been with someone and made it last for a long time. And they're both honest, like I said, so I trust their judgment. And a lot of times my feelings would get so hurt, you know what I mean? Like, I would go to them venting, expecting to get like an answer that I like to hear, and they would just be like, girl, you're wrong. Like, girl, you being mad unrealistic. Like, that's not how things work. And in talking to them, you know, in a lot of self-reflection, I came to the realization that some of my frustrations weren't exactly due to flaws on his end, but they may have been a reflection of toxic traits within myself. And I had to learn that even in the event that there was some behavior that needed to change on his end, I had to give him the time to do that. I had to give him time to unlearn that behavior. A lot of times we don't like to show people the same grace that we would like to be shown, and that's just not fair. It usually takes someone at least twice as long to unlearn a behavior as it took to learn it. And so you cannot expect someone to change a certain behavior or trait that they've possessed for years or a majority of their life or maybe their whole life in a day or even a week or a month. Like, that's just not realistic. That's just not plausible. And so with this realization, obviously I became more conscientious of my mannerisms and kind of my thought processes. And so, especially in terms of communication, I'd always, with him, I feel like I probably communicated the best I ever have with anyone. Like, I just, for some reason with him, I just couldn't hold it in. Like, you know, I've spoken before how I kind of used to keep my thoughts to myself and be real timid and stuff. But with him, it was just like, it would literally make me antsy to not say what was on my mind. But a lot of times that communication was filled with a lot of toxic things within them, or feelings within them. So it was just like, now when I communicated, it was a lot more clear, you know, and I was able to properly source a lot of my frustrations now. So by default, my communication became even better. So when it comes to kind of cutting down on that toxic behavior and doing those self-checks, every time that I would get frustrated, I would first ask myself, okay, am I being realistic? Okay, what role, if any, have I played in this? And just doing that alone, just doing that alone provided a lot of clarity for me, and it helped me to kind of act more accordingly, based on the answers that were given. So if you are ever in that position or find yourself in that position, make sure to ask yourself those questions. And if you can't properly identify a source of frustration on their end, meaning you can't find a legitimate fault that is causing you to be frustrated, then that means that you need to assess where the true source of your frustration is coming from, because it may be you. And honestly, sometimes it may be the both of you. Like, they may need to improve on something, but you may need to also, it may highlight a toxic trait within yourself. So they may need to work on their flaw while you work on whatever is going on inside of you at the same time. It's called compromise. So when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, we have got to get rid of this toxicity within ourselves if we want to prosper. And that's it. And that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below if you're bold enough to do it, some of your own toxic traits and how you've been able to overcome them, or if you haven't yet, how you plan to overcome them, because I believe in you. Make sure you like this video and subscribe if you're not already. Also, make sure to click the bell next to it to be notified. I love you so much, bougie bosses, and I will see you next time. Bye.